Amara walked carefully into the big hall, where her mother's 60th birthday party was taking place. The place was glowing with golden lights, filled with laughter and the sound of clinking glasses. Expensive perfume filled the air. Everyone looked rich and stylish, dressed in the latest designer clothes. Then Lydia, Amara's older sister, entered first. She wore a long golden gown that sparkled under the lights. Cameras flashed. Guests whispered how beautiful she looked. Lydia smiled proudly, enjoying every second of the attention. A few minutes later, Amara arrived. She wore a soft blue and white dress she had made herself, stitched carefully from leftover fabrics. It wasn't fancy, but it was graceful and unique. When she stepped into the room, the music seemed to fade. People stopped talking. Their eyes followed her, surprised by her simple look among all the luxury. Lydia turned around and saw her sister. A cruel smile crossed her face. "Amara," she said loudly so everyone could hear. "Did you make that from curtains again?" Laughter broke out around the room. Some guests tried to hide their smiles. Mrs. Collins, their mother, looked embarrassed. "You should have just let Lydia help you dress," she said sharply. "You always embarrass this family." Amara's throat tightened. She forced a small smile even as her eyes filled with tears. She clutched her small purse and walked toward a quiet corner. She wished she could disappear. The party continued. The music returned, and the laughter grew louder. Amara stood silently, pretending to sip her drink. Her hands trembled. Then she heard someone whisper nearby, "Isn't David Mensah coming tonight? The celebrity designer?" Instantly, Lydia's eyes lit up. She turned to her friends, her excitement showing. "He's the one I told you about. The designer who might feature my boutique," she said proudly. Everyone nodded, impressed. Lydia looked around, fixing her hair, hoping he would arrive soon. Amara stayed still listening. She knew how much Lydia wanted that designer's attention. She pretended not to care, but deep inside, her heart ached. Every laugh, every look reminded her how out of place she felt in her own family. She looked down at her handmade dress. The stitches were neat, the colors soft. She had poured her soul into it. But here, in this glittering world, it only brought her shame. As the night went on, Lydia shined like a star, while Amara stood alone in the corner, her pain hidden behind a quiet smile. No one noticed her trembling hands. No one saw the strength it took just to stay. That night, in a room full of gold and pride, Amara's humiliation was deep, sharp, and unforgettable. A moment that would soon turn her pain into power. She grew up loving fabrics, sketching dresses in her old notebooks. As a little girl, Amara would sit by the window, cutting small pieces of cloth and imagining what they could become. Her father always encouraged her. He would smile and say, "My little designer, one day the world will wear your art." His words made her believe in herself. But after he passed away, everything changed. The house became quiet, heavy with her mother's disappointment. Mrs. Collins didn't understand Amara's love for sewing. She wanted her daughters to live elegant lives, to marry well, dress expensively, and keep the family's name respected. One evening, Amara showed her mother a new dress she had made. It was soft pink, stitched from leftover pieces of fabric. Her eyes were bright with hope, but Mrs. Collins frowned. "Sewing won't feed you, Amara," she said coldly. "Learn to be like your sister, classy." Those words stayed in Amara's heart. She tried to continue her fashion studies, but the pressure and loneliness became too much. Without her father's support, she felt lost. Eventually, she dropped out of fashion school. The day she packed her things, she cried quietly, feeling like she had failed everyone. She moved into a small one-room apartment on the edge of town. The walls were bare, but she filled the space with fabrics, threads, and sketches. She started working as a seamstress, doing small jobs for local boutiques. The pay was little, but she poured her heart into every piece. She found beauty in what others threw away: torn clothes, old lace, unwanted fabric. To her, they weren't scraps. They were stories waiting to be told. Her designs began to reflect her emotions, pain stitched into patterns, hope hidden in colors. She created fashion from brokenness. Meanwhile, Lydia, her older sister, was living the life their mother wanted. Lydia owned a luxury boutique in the city, funded by their mother's inheritance. She wore imported perfumes, posted glamorous photos online, and called herself a fashion entrepreneur. But behind the shine, Lydia had no true creativity. Often, she would secretly use Amara's old sketches and ideas, changing small details before selling them as her own. Amara knew, but she stayed silent. She didn't want to fight her sister. Deep inside, she still loved her family, even if they never truly saw her. Every Sunday, Amara visited her mother and sister. She brought groceries or homemade snacks. Lydia would roll her eyes, and Mrs. Collins would ask when she planned to get a real job. Still, Amara smiled politely. She had learned to hide her hurt behind kindness. Sometimes, after these visits, she would go back home and cry quietly while working on a new dress. Each stitch became a small piece of healing. Her only real support came from her best friend, Teo. He was her biggest cheerleader, always pushing her to believe in her dreams. One evening, as Amara sat surrounded by fabrics, Teo looked at her with a gentle smile. "You're not broke, Amara," he said. "You're building something real. They just can't see it yet." She looked up, her eyes tired but hopeful. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm wasting my life," she whispered. Teo shook his head. "No, you're creating something different. You're not following the crowd. That takes courage." His words gave her strength. In her small apartment, with the hum of her old sewing machine, Amara found peace. She wasn't famous, but she was free. Every design carried a piece of her soul. Her father's encouragement, her mother's rejection, her sister's jealousy, her friend's faith. Still, she wished for just one chance. One moment where the world would finally see her work for what it truly was, art. She didn't know that moment was coming soon, and it would change everything. At the party, Lydia stood in the center of the crowd, holding a glass of champagne and smiling proudly. "Guess what?" she said loudly so everyone could hear. "David Mensa, the celebrity designer, personally invited me to his private fashion showcase next week." The guests around her gasped. Someone said, "Wow, that's amazing, Lydia." She smiled wider, enjoying every second of their attention. Then she added with a laugh, "He said he wants real designers, not tailors who patch rags together." The jab was sharp. Everyone knew she was talking about Amara. Amara froze, her heart aching. She tried to walk away quietly, hoping the moment would pass, but Lydia reached out and stopped her. "Oh, don't go yet, little sister," she said sweetly but loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Tell them what you do again, Amara. You alter second-hand clothes, right?" Some guests laughed. Mrs. Collins didn't say anything, but her silence was worse than words. Amara looked down, fighting back tears. Before she could reply, her best friend Teo stepped forward. "At least she makes something beautiful with her own hands," he said firmly. "Not everyone needs expensive fabric to have talent." The room went quiet for a second. Lydia's smile faded, and Mrs. Collins frowned at Teo. "That's enough," she said coldly. Amara touched Teo's arm. "Let it go," she whispered. She didn't want to make a bigger scene. With her head low, she walked out of the hall, the sound of laughter still echoing behind her. Outside, the night was cold. Rain had started to fall, light at first, then heavier. Amara walked down the empty street, her heels sinking into small puddles. Her handmade dress clung to her skin, and her mascara ran down her cheeks, mixing with the rain. Her mind replayed the words again and again. "Tailor who patches rags." It hurt deeply. She had worked so hard to build herself, and still, they saw her as nothing. As she turned a corner, a sleek black car slowed beside her. She stopped, confused. The tinted window rolled down, and a man's calm voice spoke. "Miss Collins." Amara turned, startled. A tall man stepped out of the car, holding an umbrella. He was dressed in a dark suit, elegant and confident. His face was kind but familiar. "I'm sorry if I frightened you," he said softly. "I'm David Mensa." Amara's eyes widened in shock. "David Mensa?" she repeated quietly. He smiled. "I couldn't help but notice your dress at the party. Did you design it yourself?" She hesitated, embarrassed. "Yes, but it's nothing special. Just something I made from old scraps." David looked at her for a moment, then said gently, "Then you just turned scraps into art." Amara blinked, unsure if she had heard him right. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card. "I'm looking for authentic designers for a new campaign. People who create from the heart. If you're interested, I'd love to see more of your work." She stared at the card, her hands trembling slightly. The rain kept falling, but for the first time that night, she didn't feel cold. David smiled again, got back into his car and drove off, leaving her standing under the rain with his card in her hand. She looked down at it, the letters shining faintly under the streetlight. David Mensa, House of Mensa, Creative Director. Her lips curved into a small, shaky smile. That same night, the dress that everyone mocked had caught the eye of one of the world's most famous designers. Amara didn't know it yet, but her humiliation had just turned into the beginning of something beautiful. Amara sat by her sewing table, staring at David's card. Her heart was full of fear and doubt. She wanted to call him, but her hands refused to move. What if it was just pity? What if he had only said those kind words because he felt sorry for her? She remembered the laughter at her mother's party, Lydia's cruel words, and her mother's disappointed face. The thought of being humiliated again made her chest tighten. Maybe it was safer to do nothing. Maybe people like David Mensa didn't really care about someone like her. Teo, her best friend, noticed her silence. "Why haven't you called him yet?" he asked gently. Amara sighed. "I don't want to be embarrassed again, Teo. What if he doesn't even remember me?" Teo smiled. "And what if he does? Amara, this could be your chance. You've worked too hard to hide your talent now. Take the risk." Amara looked at him uncertain. "I'm scared." He nodded. "I know. But courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing it anyway." After a long pause, Amara finally picked up her phone and sent David a message. Her hands trembled as she typed. "Hello, Mr. Mensa. This is Amara Collins. You gave me your card at my mother's party. I wanted to thank you. And if your offer still stands, I'd love to show you my designs." She pressed send before she could change her mind. To her surprise, he replied within an hour. "I remember you, Amara. I'd love to see your work. Come by my studio next week. Bring your best pieces." Amara gasped softly. Teo jumped with excitement. "See? I told you." From that day on, they worked non-stop. They spent sleepless nights cutting, stitching, and creating. Amara used recycled fabrics again, colorful, textured, full of meaning. She designed 3 new outfits, each one representing a part of her life. The first was made of soft blue fabric, representing her sadness and calm strength. The second used bold reds and golds, a symbol of courage and pain. The third was pure white, soft and flowing, representing rebirth and forgiveness. Each dress told a story. Each thread carried her emotions. Meanwhile, Lydia had started to notice something strange. She saw that David Mensa had followed Amara on social media, and even liked one of her designs. Her face turned red with anger. She felt jealousy burning inside her. At the next family dinner, Lydia couldn't hold it in any longer. "So," she said coldly, stirring her drink, "you think you're a designer now because that man followed you online?" Amara tried to stay calm. "I'm just doing what I love, Lydia. That's all." Lydia laughed bitterly. "Don't think that man actually sees you. He's just being polite." Amara looked straight at her and said quietly, "He saw what you never could, potential." Lydia's smile faded. Mrs. Collins frowned, placing her fork down. "Amara, stop chasing pity attention," she said sharply. "Lydia has real class. You just have ideas." Those words cut deep. Amara bit her lip, holding back tears. She wanted to defend herself, but decided to stay silent. Sometimes silence spoke louder than words. That night, as she sat in her small apartment, she looked at the 3 dresses hanging by the window. They shimmered softly under the moonlight. She whispered to herself, "They'll see me one day." When the day of the showcase arrived, Teo came early to help her prepare. "You ready?" he asked, smiling. Amara took a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be." She chose to wear the white gown, the one that symbolized rebirth. It was simple but powerful. As she stepped into the hall where the event was being held, cameras flashed, and people turned to look. For the first time, she didn't hide. Then she saw Lydia. Her sister looked stunning in an imported Italian gown, surrounded by photographers and reporters. Lydia smiled confidently, waving at familiar faces. When her eyes met Amara's, her expression changed, surprise then irritation. "Amara," she said under her breath, "you actually came?" Amara nodded calmly. "I belong here too." Before Lydia could reply, a hush fell over the room. David Mensa had entered. He looked elegant and focused, his eyes scanning the crowd, until they landed on Amara. He smiled warmly and walked straight toward her. Cameras turned immediately, flashing nonstop. Lydia's smile froze. "Ladies and gentlemen," David said, his voice carrying across the hall, "allow me to introduce you to the designer whose work inspired our next collection." Everyone turned to look at Amara. Gasps filled the room. Some clapped in surprise. Others whispered her name. Lydia stood frozen, unable to speak. Amara's heart pounded. She wanted to cry but held her composure. She smiled softly, realizing that the very moment she had feared, being seen, had finally arrived, but not as a joke, as a triumph. The girl they mocked for stitching scraps was now being celebrated by one of the world's top designers. And for the first time, Amara felt the weight of her pain turning into something beautiful, respect. David reveals that the gown Amara wore at her mother's birthday party, the same one everyone laughed at, was the main inspiration for his new fashion collection called Root and Revival. The crowd listens quietly as he speaks, his voice calm but full of pride. "True design," David says, looking around the room, "isn't about expensive labels or glittering fabrics. It's about stories stitched into fabric, pain turned into beauty." Amara's work tells a story the world needs to hear. The audience bursts into applause. Cameras flash everywhere. Journalists rush forward, eager to capture every second. Amara stands still, her heart racing. She can hardly believe what she's hearing. The same dress that brought her shame is now being celebrated as art. David turns to her and smiles warmly. "Amara Collins, please join me on stage." Her hands tremble as she walks up, the soft white gown flowing behind her. Teo cheers loudly from the crowd, shouting, "That's my best friend." When Amara reaches the stage, David gently takes her hand and raises it. The audience stands clapping and cheering louder. Tears fill Amara's eyes, but this time they are tears of joy. Reporters rush toward her, cameras flashing nonstop. "Amara, how do you feel?" one asks. She takes a deep breath and says softly, "Grateful. Every stitch I made came from my heart. I never thought the world would see it." Lydia stands a few steps away, frozen. Her smile looks stiff as reporters move past her, focusing only on Amara. She tries to wave and pose, but no one notices. For the first time, she feels invisible. David continues speaking to the crowd. This collection, Root and Revival, celebrates the strength of African women, their ability to rise from struggle, to create beauty out of pain. Amara reminded me of that power. She showed me that art doesn't need perfection, it needs honesty. The applause grows louder. Amara's chest fills with warmth. For years, she had been told she wasn't good enough, that her work was embarrassing. Now she stood beside one of the most respected designers in the world, not because of luck but because of her courage to be herself. That night, as the news spreads, TV channels replay the moment again and again. Young local designer Amara Collins inspires global collection. Back home, Mrs. Collins sits on the couch, watching the TV screen. She sees her daughter smiling beside David Mensah, lights flashing, the crowd cheering. Her eyes fill with tears. For a long time, she says nothing. Then quietly she whispers, "That's my daughter?" There's a soft tremble in her voice, pride mixed with guilt. The next morning, Amara returns home. She's still glowing from the event, but also nervous. She knows her family has seen everything. When she opens the door, Lydia is waiting inside. Her makeup is smudged, her eyes red from crying. Lydia doesn't shout this time. Her voice is soft, shaky. "I just wanted to be the one Mom was proud of," she says. "I didn't mean to hurt you so much." Amara takes a deep breath, her voice gentle. "You still can, Lydia. But you don't have to tear me down to rise. There's enough space for both of us." Lydia's tears fall. She nods slowly, then steps forward and hugs Amara tightly. For a moment, both sisters cry in silence. No more competition, no more jealousy, just the pain of years melting away. Mrs. Collins stands by the doorway, watching them. Her eyes glisten with emotion. She doesn't say much, just steps closer and places her hand softly on Amara's shoulder. In that quiet moment, Amara feels something shift. Not everything is perfect, but it's real. For the first time in her life, her mother looks at her not with disappointment, but with pride. The same girl who once stood alone in the corner of a party, mocked for her handmade dress, now stood as a symbol of strength, grace, and hope. And as the night settled again, Amara finally understood. She didn't need validation from anyone. Her worth had always been stitched into every piece she ever made. Amara officially partners with House of Mensa, and soon her first capsule collection sells out in just a few days. The designs, inspired by her roots, her journey, and her resilience, become a symbol of strength and authenticity. Fashion magazines call her the new voice of modern African design. But Amara doesn't let the fame change her. Instead of chasing luxury, she focuses on purpose. She starts a program for young girls interested in fashion and calls it Threads of Grace. The goal is simple: to teach sustainable design and help girls turn their creativity into confidence. At the launch event for Threads of Grace, the small hall is filled with bright colors, laughter, and handmade fabrics. The walls are decorated with designs made by her students. Reporters, designers, and local families come to celebrate. Among the guests, Mrs. Collins quietly walks in. She isn't wearing her usual fancy clothes. Instead, she's wearing a simple but beautiful Ankara dress, one that Amara made for her with her own hands. When people compliment her, she smiles shyly and says, "My daughter made it." When Amara sees her mother, her heart softens. The two women meet in the middle of the room. Mrs. Collins' eyes glisten with emotion. Mrs. Collins, softly, "I used to think elegance came from money and names on labels. But you showed me it comes from heart." Amara's eyes fill with tears. She doesn't need to say much. Her smile says everything. There is no anger, no revenge speech, just peace and quiet pride. Later, when the event ends, Amara walks around, talking to the young girls who joined her program. She listens to their dreams, becoming designers, tailors, businesswomen. She tells them, "Don't let anyone make you feel small for starting simple." Every masterpiece starts with a single thread. The girls clap and hug her, their faces glowing with hope. Meanwhile, Lydia watches from a corner, recording her sister's speech on her phone. She posts it on social media with the caption, "So proud of my sister Amara." Her designs aren't just fashion, they're stories of strength. It's the first time she's ever publicly supported Amara. People notice, comments pour in praising both sisters. Slowly, the rivalry that once divided them begins to fade. At home, things start to heal, not perfectly but genuinely. The family still has disagreements, but now there's more laughter at the dinner table, more listening, more respect. Mrs. Collins often wears Amara's clothes proudly and talks about her with pride to anyone who'll listen. One evening, Amara sits on her balcony, watching the sunset. Teo joins her, smiling. "You've come a long way, Amara," he says. Amara looks out at the sky and replies softly, "It wasn't easy, but maybe it wasn't meant to be easy. Every stitch, every tear, every mistake, it all led here." She takes a deep breath, feeling peace settle in her chest. Her journey had started with humiliation, but it ended with grace, not because she proved anyone wrong, but because she stayed true to who she was. Now, as her designs travel across the world, Amara knows that her real success isn't in the fame or money. It's in the girls she inspires, the family she forgave, and the woman she became. The story doesn't end with revenge. It ends with growth, soft, powerful, and full of heart. Amara turns off the lights in her new fashion studio. The space is quiet except for the hum of the city outside. She looks around. Tables full of sketches, rolls of fabric, and dresses that once only existed in her dreams. The door opens softly. It's David Mensah. He walks in, smiling warmly. "David, you did it, Amara. You turned pain into fashion. That's rare." Amara, smiling, "Pain is fabric, David. You just have to decide how to wear it." He nods, proud, then waves goodbye as he leaves. Amara stands still for a moment, breathing deeply. Her eyes fall on a mannequin in the corner. On it hangs the blue and white dress she wore to her mother's birthday party, the one everyone once mocked. Now it's carefully framed and spotlighted like art. She walks up to it, touching the soft fabric gently. A smile forms on her face as she whispers, "Amara, you were never just fabric. You were proof I could start again." The camera slowly pans out, showing the glowing studio, the framed dress, and Amara standing strong, peaceful, and free. The same dress that once brought her shame now shines as a symbol of victory and rebirth. Hi besties, sparkling heart, thank you so much for watching till the end. If Amara's story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. See you in the next one. Bye. Waving hand sparkles.